What's up, family? I learned something a long time ago. It stuck with me to this day, and that is you can learn something from everything. It means that if you investigate intentionally enough, if you observe long enough, you'll be able to extract some education from almost everything. And I don't know if you're into the sports world, but Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, who did an incredibly amazing job coaching the Jackson State football team for the past few years, took a position as a head coach at the University of Colorado. There's been a lot of conversation around his decision. I want to share with you 3 life lessons we can learn from Coach Prime's decision.
Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better.
All right, listen, we can learn something from everything. We can extract some education out of anything. You know, one of the things a mentor said to me a long time ago, he says, listen, everybody is an example. Everything is an opportunity to learn. And everything is an opportunity for us to be educated by. Anyway, if you are connected to the sports world in any way, I'm sure you have heard of Coach Deion Sanders' decision, Coach Prime's decision to take a job at the University of Colorado. I think I've been following it very closely because my mother-in-law and my father-in-law and my brother-in-law are all graduates and supporters of Jackson State University. My wife was born and raised in Jackson, and even though I didn't go to a HBCU, I went to school in Jackson, I didn't go to a HBCU, our foundation invests tens of thousands of dollars each year into the HBCU community. So we've been following it really closely, and there's some things I've observed about people's responses to Coach Prime's decision to leave that I feel like can be some lessons for those of us who are passionate about helping people. You know, one of the things that I think gets in the way of our fruitfulness when we're trying to help people is our frustration. And if you're in any line of work where you are using your time, talent, and treasure to try to elevate and improve someone else's life, if you've done that, you know that one of the enemies to fruitfulness is frustration. It can be frustrating at times. But this is what I've learned. I learned that some frustration always comes from failed expectations. What do you mean? It means that you get frustrated when you get something that you don't want that you didn't expect, or you don't get something that you do want that you did expect, right? That applies to relationships also. Like frustration in relationships is when you get something that you don't want that you didn't expect, and you're like, yo, if I knew that this was what it was before I signed up for this, I wouldn't have signed up for this, right? Or you don't get something that you do want and you did expect. So we can't completely eliminate frustration, but we can reduce frustration if we align our expectations. If we've got realistic expectations, then it doesn't eliminate, but it does decrease and reduce some of our frustration. And so if you're committed to helping people and throwing your life into people long term, like I am, then I think what we've got to learn how to do is to align our expectations with reality. And I've seen some things. I've been observing people's responses to Coach Prime leaving, and you reserve the right to have whatever your opinion is about that. But here are 3 life lessons I think all of us can apply to our lives if we're serious about helping people. I'm gonna give you 3 things here that I think are very, very important and very significant. Here's the first thing. Here's the first thing I think we need to learn and just accept. Let's align our expectations for this. If you're gonna help people, you gotta accept this. Here's the first one. Your contribution to someone else's life does not make them grateful. Only their character does. Your contribution to somebody else's life will never make them grateful. Only their character does. What do I mean by that? I mean that for some people, no matter how generous you are, no matter how benevolent you are, no matter how kind you are, no matter how much you do, it will never be enough. They will say you should have done more. you should have stayed longer. You should have opened more doors. If you open 2 doors for them, and they'll say you should have opened 4. That you gotta wrap your head around the fact that you cannot, watch this, outgive a person's character. That there's nothing your generosity can do to make someone grateful. Their character determines whether or not they are appreciative. So that's important. Those of us that are throwing our lives into helping people need to wrap their head around this thought, that some people love your yes more than they love you. They think they love you because you're always giving them a yes. But some people actually love your yes more than they love you. So your generosity doesn't make someone grateful, only their character does. All right, here's the second thing that I learned. You can only control your communication. You can't control someone else's interpretation. So when you're communicating with people, you have a responsibility, we have an obligation to be as clear as possible, to be as concise as possible, to be as contextual as possible. Yet at the same time, the only thing you can control is your communication. You can't control someone else's interpretation. This is what I've learned, man. This is what I've learned. I've learned that a lot of times we place a lot of emphasis and focus on the communicator. And like the person that's communicating, you got to be clearer and you got to be contextual and you got to be concise. I agree with that. I don't think that's incorrect. I do think it's incomplete because clear communication doesn't always mean good communication because there's got to be comprehension. So no matter how clear you are, if somebody is committed to misunderstanding you, you're going to be misunderstood. See, there are factors that contribute to someone's interpretation of what you've communicated that you can't control. You can't control what filters are on their ears that impact how they're interpreting what you're saying. You can't control what may have happened to them in their past, chronic patterns of disappointment or distrust that cause them to project some of those things on you. You can only be held accountable to what you said, not what they thought you meant. It's like you can help people and you're like, yo, I'm helping you for a season. I never said I was going to help you forever. All right, here's the third thing, and I'm out of your hair and out of your way. It's this: you cannot live your life being controlled by the opinions of people who won't do what you do, but feel like they have the moral authority to tell you how to do it. Now, I'm not saying that we can't or we shouldn't receive valuable insight and input from people who are not in positions that we're in. I think one of the most incredible stories in the Bible is a story about a woman named Esther who was being advised by someone who was lower on the socioeconomic status, like her uncle Mordecai was advising her. And Esther's in the palace. She's a queen. She's wealthy. She's influential. And Mordecai is not in the palace. He's not a king. He's not in the king's court. He's not wealthy. He's not as influential, but he was rich where Esther was poor. He was rich in wisdom. He was rich in godly convictions. And so he was rich in the area, so he was able to add value to Esther in that area. So I'm not saying that people have to have what you have or do what you do to help you. But there's a difference, right, between situations and scenarios like that versus people who are simply experts at commentary and not experts at contribution. What do I mean by that? They're great at talking, but they haven't done anything themselves. It's amazing. So it is people who won't do what you did to get to where you are, who will now assume the position of an expert and feel like they got the moral authority to tell you what you should do with what you have when they haven't properly stewarded what they have. And the truth of the matter is, here's a biblical principle here. Here's a biblical principle, and that is the Bible teaches that how you manage whatever little you have is actually a reflection of how you will manage more. So the people that are saying, if I were in your position, I would be doing this, and if I had what you have, I would be doing that. Here's how we can know if that's true or not. Are they doing anything that is similar to that with the influence and the acquisitions and the assets that they already have? So those are 3 life lessons that I feel like are incredibly important and significant. I want to encourage you to wrap your head around it. If you're going to throw yourself into people, if you're going to help people, you got to align your expectations with reality, because some frustration comes from failed expectations. You just need to know, no matter how much you give people, your contribution will never make them grateful. Only their character does. You need to know you can only control your communication. You can't control their interpretation. And last but not least, you can't live your life being controlled by people who won't do what you do, but feel like they have the moral authority to tell you how to do it. All right, family, take care. God bless.